Okay. Greetings and welcome to tonight's Grassroots Community Symposium series focused on mental health. My name is Jeff Bailey. I'm the General Manager of Business Operations and Finance at the Alberta Basketball Association, and I will be your moderator for tonight's session. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the land and the territory that we come to you from tonight, and that Alberta Basketball and our sport are so lucky to call home. Alberta Basketball acknowledges that the province of Alberta is located on Treaty 4, Treaty 6, Treaty 7, Treaty 8, and Treaty 10 territories, and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of the First Nations, the Métis, the Inuit, and all of the First Peoples of Canada, who share a history and a deep connection with this land, and whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries, and whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. Tonight's presentation, the topic is on return to sport, how to bring your best self. We're delighted to have Claire Fuster from the Calgary Sports Institute, from the Canadian Sports Institute, Calgary, to present challenges and strategies to bring your best self towards improving your performance and some mental health strategies. Claire, I'd like to turn it over to you now to begin your presentation. And if there's any questions, please share them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And if you could just turn your mics to mute, we'd appreciate it. Thank you, Claire.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing this topic into our worlds. We know that it's been a fairly common conversation around mental health, and now we're maybe making those, how we see the intersection of mental health and sport. And of course, as a mental performance consultant, there's some overlap as well. So you'll see that in the presentation. So just to, I go by my name is Claire Fuster. I go by the pronoun she and her. And I first wanted to just acknowledge that I am coming to you from Calgary in my home in the Treaty 7 region. And I like to share this because I feel very fortunate to live, work, and play on these traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nations of Region 3. So if you want to stick in the chat where you're from, that's awesome. Just want to make sure that we all kind of acknowledge some of the lands that we get to participate and enjoy our sports and recreation on. So I have a short period of time. I'm going to pack some things in if I can. What I wanted to just sort of bring up today are the challenges that athletes and parents are facing, or that we've seen some of athletes' challenges as they return to sport. We know that mental health has been a big conversation, both in regular population as well as athletes. It's become quite high profile with athletes in particular. And so I wanted just to bring in and help understand the intersection of mental health and performance, because we know that if we have optimal mental health, then we might have some optimal performance as well. At the end of this session, I'm going to provide a few tools and strategies that might help you with your own mental well-being, return to sport, help with your children if you're here, supporting your kids in that capacity. So that's what we're going to try to get through today. If you have any questions and you don't want to put them in the chat directly to everyone, I would encourage you to put them into the chat for Jeff, and he can monitor that a little bit too. I don't see the chat as I'm presenting. So thanks for coming. Thanks for engaging in this really important conversation. As Jeff mentioned, I do mental health work as well as mental performance work, and I really see that intersection and really like to help support athletes from all areas of life, because they, as we all know, they're people first and athletes second. Sometimes they think they're athletes first and people second, but maybe we might need to change that mentality a little bit, especially at this kind of age and the identity piece. So here we go. We're going to kind of dive in. As we start here, I like to start with actually a strategy that can be used in our well-being as well as performance. And so we're just going to get into the room today. So if you're comfortable closing your eyes, or if you're in a place you can do that. If you're driving, of course, don't do that. And you're listening in, please don't do that. Just if you want to pull to the side, you can. Just check in with yourself. If you close your eyes, what kind of sensations do you notice? What kind of breathing do you notice? Are there any feelings that get conjured up? We might just want to pause and just really bring that presence here in this very moment. you'll hear some of the conversation that I have around mindfulness and that present moment. And we are getting caught out of that present moment often these days. So just be here with that moment. Bring yourself fully to this presentation, if you can, based on where you're at, and gently open your eyes. Thank you. So there have been questions around, is there one thing I could do to bring my best self? Here is a very simple strategy prior to this, prior to really bring ourselves back to that present moment. We do get caught up thinking about the past. We think about the future. We get caught up with some of our thoughts and feelings and sensations. And if we can just settle some of that and bring ourselves back to the space that we're in, that can be really valuable. So the question that I was going to raise, we were going to do a Mentimeter, but there's only a couple of us here. And if you would like to engage, I just want to ask if you are willing to share, and you can do it in the chat. You can come off the chat if you're comfortable. What kind of emotions are either you noticing with your children, or maybe even you're having around this return to like full-on sport? Is there anything that comes up for you? And again, you can come off mute, or you can put it in the chat. I'm going to be talking about them, but you can share it anyway. I'll just pause for a minute just in case anyone wants to come in. So what you see here is a very few pictures of some of these emojis. I put them in here because this is what's happening. We notice that there are some athletes who are feeling extremely excited to be in there, like, just get me going, I want to be in there. Some athletes are a little more fearful of what's happening. They have some questions and challenges. They're, haven't played in a while. There's some real trepidation around that. Maybe some fears of like embarrassment, or, so some are super excited to start playing with their friends again, seeing their teammates. Some might have some challenges around questions of like, well, what if I'm not good enough again, right? So there's just some real range of emotions around it. Some anxieties, we might see some athletes with real anxieties around getting back into the field of play. So we just know that there are such a range of emotions, and we're really trying to help support whatever they are, because emotions are so valuable, and we're careful not to negate the emotion, to feel it and see if we can kind of move forward anyway, even if we're feeling some of these emotions. And everyone is experiencing things from their own place. So, there was some language around the pandemic as we were in the same storm in different boats. And I think that's really important to recognize, is not everybody's going to experience the same thing. Not everyone's going to have the same emotion. Some, like I said, have this sort of range of emotions from real trepidation to real excitement. And sometimes as even adults, we're like, oh man, how come you're not so excited to go back and play with your friends and be in there? Because that's how we are thinking that it should be. But our kids are maybe not feeling that. So just really kind of trying to meet them where they're at, helping them meet themselves where they're at. Of course, with sports, we're supposed to be tough and get through these things. And that's part of the challenge of what athletes are experiencing, is this concept that they need to just figure it out, and the term suck it up, like get through it. But sometimes if we can just meet them where they're at, validate some of their emotions, that can be really valuable. So lots of different emotions coming out for lots of different reasons. So we're not going to do this Mentimeter, but I wanted to sort of talk about some of these challenges as they return to basketball. Maybe some of the challenges parents have as well, because we're talking parents and kids, as well as trying to recognize that sometimes what we're challenged with is impacting our children. So that might be COVID related, getting back into the world, fears of some of that. But I put together some of the things that we're really noticing for athletes as challenges. One of them is this lack of confidence. It's been so long since I've played, which can really impact some of the fears, some of the anxieties that athletes might be experiencing. You might have a child who might be on the more anxious side. And so getting back into sport, getting back into with their team on the court might be really difficult for them. Whereas you might see some of their friends just sort of like really going for it and having a really great time and just being really embracing it. So again, let's just recognize where our athletes are at. this fear of failure. What if I don't make a team? What if I'm not as good as others this time? I haven't done this for 2 years. And really trying to recognize some of that fear of failure can be really crucial, because if we start identifying with some of these challenges and really adopting them and having them in part of our language, it can really impact our mental well-being. And that's really what we're trying to look at, is how can we use some of what's happening in our well-being strategies to improve performance. Increased expectations, and I put identity in here. So I'm hearing in sport worlds, I work at Mount Royal University as well, and I work with the varsity programs, and recruiting is happening. And so, of course, we've recognized some of the challenges with recruiting because athletes don't have videos. They might feel worried about, well, there's such a pool of us that didn't make it, and some people are, staying in the programs a little longer. How am I going to get recruited? And some of those conversations might come up. So I only have a couple of years left to make it, might be some of the statements. And then this have to language, I have to make it this year. And this is such strong language that I really encourage athletes to pull away from, because it's such filled with ripe expectations and pressure and fear, and some athletes even use the word dread with me when they use this language. Like I dread going to practice because I really have to make it. And then what if I don't make it? What does that mean about my identity? What does that mean about myself? Where's my self-worth all wrapped up in this? So you can start to see, as I'm talking about this, these are the challenges that athletes are facing in sport, but it can have huge implications on their well-being. And so we really want to check into where this is, what's happening around this, and how we can work on this. We can help our athletes, and there's some things that they can do to manage some of this. This missed opportunity. I've missed 2 years of competing. What if I'm not good enough? Again, these expectations, and this full identity wrapped up in there. And then, of course, we're comparing ourselves to others. So some people, as we may have noticed through the pandemic and some years off, they were thriving. We've seen some of them. You see them outside playing basketball. They're going to the courts and playing basketball. But some people just didn't have that motivation, and so they weren't doing some of that. So that kind of comparison is happening. What if these people are better than me now? I was better than them before. And so this comparison, which really can get in the way of where we are at personally, and where we can start to look at what we want to do to improve. So this intersection here, as you can see, we can start to look at if this is starting to happen with our kids, or if this is you as a child who's watching this, a player who's thinking, this is me, like these are some of the things that I'm dealing with right now. Let's do a little check-in and say, okay, this can really impact how we feel every day, how we feel going to practice, how we feel when we wake up in the morning. So I just want to talk a little bit about this concept of mental health. What does it mean? And I can't go into it in a large amount of detail, but want to check in and see how we can notice some of these challenges that are being faced by athletes and parents and the system in general are really having an impact on well-being that's already challenged because of some of the concepts of COVID, the social challenges, the academic challenges that we're facing too. So remember, this is layered. This isn't just sport. There's all these layers that are going along with it. And so we just want to, be kind and compassionate to this layer of what our children are going through, children who are players, what you are going through. Patience is going to be crucial here, and just checking in. Where am I at? Is this me? If this is me, I might need to do something about it, because these things might get in the way of my performance as well. So let's just do a little check-in here of what we're talking about when we talk about mental health. And here's a slide we use when we talk about mental health, and really it's the syndrome of symptoms of positive feelings. And I'll show another slide that shows like we can have really optimal mental well-being as well as really poor mental well-being. So when we're well and we're positive and we have optimal mental health, it's positive affect, and we're low in that negative affect. We might have ups and downs, performance might not be great, or we might not feel so good some days, but in general, we're feeling pretty good. We're pretty satisfied with life. So even if we come off the court and we hadn't had this great performance, it doesn't take us away for days. We're in general, life is pretty good. We accept where we are. Now, this can be really hard for athletes because they want to be 2 steps ahead of where they are often. And we really need to get to this place of like, I am where I am, and I'm willing to look at my goals, and I'm willing to move forward and get some motivation for that. There's some autonomy in that. We feel like we can have some control. And in regards to our environment. So when we go to basketball, when we go to school, there's some control over that. We feel good about it. We have relationships with others. We have feeling like there's purpose in life. And again, this is where identity hits, that it's not just basketball purpose, but that's really hard. Some of you who are watching this either now, or if you watch this after the session's over and you're kind of rewatching it, this is hard for us to help athletes understand that they are not only athletes and they are whole people. They feel like there's personal growth, I'm developing, and then there's contribution to community and integration, and like things are pretty good. So you can see there's psychological well-being, emotional well-being, and social well-being. And so when we think of this positive mental health, it can be impacted by many things, and sport is one of them, especially if our self-worth is all wrapped up in there. So if I'm not performing well, or I'm not making a team, then am I worthy, or do I deserve to be part of this? So we're really trying to navigate for athletes to think about how they can improve this. So I wanted to show this slide because I think we need to really recognize this is the intersection here. When we have optimal mental health, we will be more able to perform better. When we have poor mental health, our performance will be poorer. And here are some reasons why. When we think about focused on the poor mental health, we are distracted by some of those anxieties or worries. So our brain can't fill with some of the positive things that are going on. It's harder for us to focus. We have a more difficult time connecting with others. We're kind of in ourselves. So when we go to practice, we're more focused on ourselves individually, and I might be isolating. We might kind of be wrapped up in our own heads instead of engaging with our teammates, engaging with our coaches. And so all of these components are really impactful. And so we want to check in, where are we at in our well-being? Where is our mental health at? What does it look like? And you know, the green, like we can also think about it like this, the green light all the way to the red light. So green light is when things are going well. We go back to this mental health. I have these general feelings. I'm taking care of myself. I'm getting the sleep that I need. All of these things are pretty good. Oh, we're going down into the yellow. Maybe I'm not sleeping so well. Maybe I'm not interacting. Maybe my emotions are a little high, unstable, or there's a little instability with my emotions. And then all the way down to the red. Oh, I'm not looking so good. You know, things aren't going, and maybe we need really to get some support. So we want to think about this as a check-in. This is a great green, yellow, red light check-in. And some schools are using this check-in, like, where am I at? And we can also use this for sport performance. This is awesome. Where am I at? When I get on the court, where am I at? Green, yellow, red. What do I need to do to see if I can improve my performance mentality right now? Are there things I can do to optimize my mental health? So really checking in on that intersectionality. And I think the more we talk about mental health with athletes, well, all of us really, we're going to get to a better conversation of how do we work with them together. Now, my job with as a mental performance consultant, we often talk about strategies that we can use. And I like to really recognize that some of the strategies we're using for mental health are the same strategies we're using for performance. And so here's this concept of checking your battery. So how am I feeling? Am I feeling pretty great? That green, I can go to practice. I can feel confident at practice. I can check in with my teammates at practice. I can feel like I can set some really good goals. I feel really good about, even if I make a mistake, I can leave practice and saying like, I put in a lot of effort. I contributed to my team. Things are pretty good, right? So I have this purpose. So here we go again. I have a purpose, and it's not necessarily to score all the baskets. It's not to help necessarily to be the person who's going to win the game for the team, but I have a purpose. I can contribute. But then as we start doing that, like feeling okay, maybe maybe I wasn't getting sleep, or maybe school got in the way of that. Maybe something didn't go so well. Maybe some of my relationships are a little rocky right now. Okay, is there anything that I can do to see if I can make that a little bit better? So is our battery getting depleted, or are we able to get our battery fueled again? And there's different ways we can do that. So again, everybody's going to be very individual around this, but we want to check in with our batteries. How are we feeling? So we can use this for our mental well-being, or we can use this as a battery going into practices. But really, if it's starting to get empty, we probably need to ask for some help around that, whether that's our coaches, whether that's our parents, whether it's our teammates, but just recognize, oh, I'm going into that even orange. I'm starting to struggle. I need to reach out and ask for help. And this is a really big component of the concept of mental well-being is if we're not where we want to be, let's ask for help. Young people, adults, everyone deserves to have someone to help. And then let's see who our energy givers are. Who are the people that are in our corners who we can connect with? So really checking in that battery, where are we at, mental health, as well as something that we can do to check in when we're getting on the court. The next piece you'll see is this evidence. And now this evidence that I'm doing well. And this is, again, we can use this for our mental health. Like, I'm doing well. I'm going to school. I'm engaging with friends. I'm sleeping pretty well. I'm physically active. I'm working hard in practice. I'm doing pretty well. So there's the evidence to suggest that. And then we can use that as a confidence builder list as well. Okay, yeah, you know what? I've been at the gym for a while. Like, I feel strong. I've been practicing my dribbling, even in my basement, if I haven't been doing it too far, in practices yet. Or recognizing like, oh yeah, I'm going in and every day I'm shooting several free throws, or I'm practicing my shot. And I'm noticing that there's evidence there that I will be okay. I will be confident. Even if I'm not quite there yet, I'm building that confidence. But then it goes into compassion. Okay, be kind to self. What happens if I'm maybe not where I want to be? Well, in this world that we've been going through the pandemic, not everybody is where they wanted to be coming back into sport right now. So maybe that's physically, maybe that's in regards to maybe some of the technical components, maybe that's in regards to playmaking. And so maybe we can sit back and say, okay, let's be kind, but what can I do to improve? Who can I utilize? Who are my energy givers? Who are the people in my life who can help me out? But I'm going to be kind and compassionate to myself, because this can be really challenging. We're just getting back into things. Let's see where we can go. And you'll see on my top right, this is huge for my world, is being grateful. So every time you do get into a situation where you can be grateful, I am getting to go to practice. I get to go spend time with my friends. I get to go and see where I fit in here. I get to go see where I compete at. This is that I'm so grateful to be part of it. And of course, what athletes often struggle with is I'm not where I want to be. So this is where the compassion and gratitude comes in and says, I worked really hard at practice today. I worked really hard. I had really great connection with one of my teammates today. So we're starting to, again, add to that evidence list to build the confidence to say, I am worthy of being out on the court. I'm contributing, I'm working hard, I'm having fun. And basketball isn't my only part of who I am. This is just a little piece that I can express myself doing or playing basketball, but is not only who I am. So this real concept of gratitude, and what we know about the science of gratitude, is it shifts our brain neural pathways. And that's what we really want to do. So even as a family, even as, what were you grateful for today when you think about your basketball practice or your day at school or your time with friends? What kind of thing really brought you joy? Many of us spend a lot of time on the things that we aren't able to do yet, or we aren't good at yet. And when we, spend all of our energy there, we're not getting to a place where like, oh, I'm really grateful for what I am doing. I'm really happy. It's bringing me a lot of joy. So really helping kids understand that, maybe changing some of those neural pathways would be good too. So obviously setting realistic goals, if your staircase, you want to be on the third staircase, but right now you're just working to be on the first staircase, be patient with that. Set realistic goals so that you can feel success, so that your coaches can help support that, so your teammates can help support that, so that your family can help support that. Baby steps is where we want to go here. And sometimes you might jump to the next step. It might be a really big step. but know that there's different steps that we're going to, but setting some of those realistic goals, it can really help with that motivation too. And of course, I love this quote, Dalai Lama, choose to be optimistic. It does feel better, but this can be hard sometimes when we're struggling or we see challenges. Where are our silver linings? What can be helpful for us? We don't want to minimize our negative emotions, but sometimes we need to act as if I'm optimistic, or act as if I'm confident, and see how we can manage some of that. Our thoughts are not they don't have to be true. And sometimes we can just let them come and go and be like, well, that was just a thought. That's nice. And then I can choose some optimism, like, oh, I'm really excited to go to practice today. Can't wait to see my friends. I've been working on my shot in my driveway because the weather's nice. So I'm going to see how that's translating to basketball. So all of these components, as you can see, can optimize our mental well-being, which will also have an impact on performance. I was just speaking with an athlete recently who was coming back from an injury, and one of the concepts we focused on was mindfulness. They really liked the feeling of being calm, because through injury, there was a bit of stress and coming back, and fears, and some of those kinds of things were going on. And I said, well, let's just start practicing mindfulness. And even if that practice doesn't feel like it's for performance right now, you are starting to create habits that will be helpful for performance. So that's all what we're trying to do here, is create some habits that will be helpful for performance. So we had a couple questions that I'm going to just answer here, and then I'm happy to ask any other questions that come up for you. There was a question around how we deal with mistakes that are happening on the court, whether that's a missed shot or missed opportunity, or something that, a missed pass. So what we want to think about are resetting strategies right on the court. What can we do for that resetting strategy? It might be a simple, like, clap of the hand, something that gets you into a place that just resets you. And guess what? We need to practice that in practices, not just in games. Maybe that's just a focus on where the ball is, really coming back to that place. So the concept of present moment comes really into place here with that resetting strategy. We want to be where our feet are. We don't want to be thinking about that missed shot. We want to be right here, right now with our teammates. It might be engaging and calling to a teammate, using some language right on the court. It might be looking at one of your teammates in the eye. So you will need to find what that reset strategy is. It needs to be quick, obviously, because you might be transitioning to a defense if that shot is missed, but really being able to come back. Maybe it's a cue word that you might use, like reset, focus, get back in the game, and using that from a calm place rather than an angry place and frustrated place. Often that frustrated place, it builds and builds and builds, and then impacts our performance. So hopefully that answers that question. The other one is a short, daily routine. Well, guess what we've just done? I've just shared some of these short possible routines that you could get into to bring your best self. Certainly we want to make sure sleep is happening. Teenagers, I'm not focusing on sleep, but we need probably for you to be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep at night, moving away from some of your phones. That's going to set you up for success in the day anyway. And then waking up with some strategies, whether that's things you do prior to your day starting or prior to practice starting. So having a moment of gratitude, having a moment of breath to focus on self, be in the present moment, reminding yourself of what went well at practice, not just what didn't go well. Those are very simple strategies that we can use and use and use. That's maybe 5 or 10 minutes prior to practice. Might even, if you think about that evidence list, might start getting you thinking about some visuals, visualizing what you did well at practice, which really creates, again, those neural pathways are really good for us when we strengthen them in the positive. We are generally humans that like to look for the negatives. We're protecting ourselves. So the more we can enhance some of the outlook, the optimism, the confidence building strategies, feeling good, contributing, and checking in on ourselves, those are some great things to start off with in regards to a daily routine. So I think we wanted to leave a little bit of time here, Jeff, for some questions. So we have a couple minutes, maybe. We started a little later, and some people might start coming in for the next group, I imagine. But are there any questions that anyone has that has prompted, or my presentation has prompted anything, or maybe something that's come up in the chat, Jeff?
Thank you, Claire. I'm just looking at the chat right now. We haven't had any questions come in on the chat. Wondering if, anyone from the gallery would like to share any comments, or might have a question that they want to, ask to Claire. I can pause, then stop the recording at this time as we get ready for the next one, and
Sure.
you can kind of just have an off-the-air conversation if that.
Great. Yep, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And I'd like to say thank you, Claire, for taking the time this evening to share some of the challenges and some strategies to support and increase mental health and performance in both our young athletes, young and old, and parents and their families. I really appreciate you taking the time this evening, and I hope we can do it again sometime in the near future.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's been a great experience to share my thoughts and ideas, and thanks for everyone who has asked some questions too. Hope you got something out of it.
Thank you, everyone, and have a safe night and good night.